10 years ago, the Divine Revelation game crashed into our world, offering power and rare loot to anyone talented enough to survive its secret realms. But that gift turned into a nightmare as chaos and bloodshed swallowed everything in its path, until the 8 supreme powers of the Divine Revelation Hall finally stepped in to restore order. Yet the very professionals who claimed to save us soon became the new elite ruling over everyone else, leaving Yuju to mourn his parents, who were just more collateral damage in that global massacre, with his only goal now being to secure a life where his sister does not have to suffer. And seeing his little sister run toward him reminds him exactly why he needs to get strong. So Yuju commits to challenging the secret realm to become a professional, walking straight into the portal that will decide his future, where he stands before the divine entities tasked with assigning his new life. And without a second of hesitation, he selects the path of the assassin, as the system begins the process of forging his new abilities, bathing him in a surge of raw energy that rewrites his physical potential, solidifying his choice as the system confirms his new class. Yuju tests his new blade, embracing the cold reality of a life hidden in the shadows, while a celestial guide warns him that his kind are feared harbingers of inevitable doom. But his resolve remains unshaken as he stands amidst a graveyard of legendary weapons, pushing back against the psychological pressure meant to break his fragile human spirit. And with his mind made up, he steps directly into the shimmering portal of the Divine Revelation game, where the massive gates swing open to reveal the entrance to the novice dungeon, guarded by powerful entities that watch him enter with a mix of curiosity and cold dismissal, forcing Yuju to steady his stance as he prepares to cross the threshold alone. And as the heavy doors groan open, he steps forward into the unknown trial ahead, walking across a path of floating platforms that test his focus and his nerves, while he recalls the specific requirements for the other 4 classes in this harsh new world, realizing that unlike the warriors or mages who rely on others, he has absolutely nothing. Yet he finds a strange comfort in his status as a solitary, independent wolf, knowing that the assassin class is statistically the most broken advantage in the early game, because the stealth skill does not just grant invisibility, it builds up lethal attack power over time. Armed with that singular, broken skill, Yuju commits to his strategy, stepping through the portal to claim his spot in the novice dungeon, and arrives immediately in the bustling heart of the Embers Plaza, where he maps out his plan to grind monsters and master his new talent, only to hear a harsh shout demanding he get lost, finding a group of pathetic stragglers blocking his path and acting like they own the place, while one of them aggressively corners a young woman, calling her little sister with a sneer, forcing a young man to step in and shove the predator away to protect her, as Yuju watches the pair struggle, realizing they are clearly outmatched by these thugs. Disgusted by how these cowards act like tyrants despite being total weaklings, he compares them to parasitic worms that only know how to infest the weak, and watches as the thug brutally strikes the young man for daring to fight back, deciding in a heartbeat to intervene. Seeing a perfect chance to test his stealth skill, he slides into the shadows and moves behind the group without leaving a trace, planning to provoke them into a chase so the siblings can make a clean escape. Yuju strikes the thug, hoping his distraction buys the siblings enough time to escape, but the system immediately blocks his attack, reminding him that the plaza is a strictly enforced safe zone, and the confused thug turns around, realizing someone just tried to land a hit on him, while Yuju curses his own ignorance about how these protected areas actually work. So the entire gang turns their aggression toward him, giving him no choice but to start running. Realizing he has to pivot his strategy, he decides to prioritize escaping their immediate reach, jumping over an obstacle as he desperately tries to break their line of sight. And relying on his agility, he manages to put some distance between himself and his pursuers, while the siblings take advantage of the chaos to finally make their getaway, leaving the thugs to curse their luck and vow revenge against the assassin. Yuju finds a quiet corner to catch his breath, acknowledging the value of the assassin class for early game survival. As he pulls up his inventory menu, discovering just how handy that extra storage space really is, he retrieves the guidebook to finally get some reliable information on his surroundings. Reading through the pages, he confirms the safe zone rules and starts planning his next steps, finding a map of recommended hunting grounds that perfectly matches his current level. Locking in his next objective, Yuju sets his sights on the wilderness, heading east toward the demonic sheep territory while leaving the city behind, reaching the hunting grounds where the docile-looking mobs graze in the open, checking the guidebook to confirm these sheep are passive unless provoked, calculating his base physical attack of 120 against the sheep's 180 health pool, realizing a 2-minute stealth charge is his only path to an instant kill. Seeing each kill grants 5 experience, which makes leveling to level 2 a tedious grind, executing his first strike for a clean kill but noting the massive time investment required, deciding he needs to optimize his combat flow to speed up the leveling process, diving into the fray with a direct attack immediately after exiting stealth, getting countered by the sheep's quick reaction, which sends him reeling back, forcing a follow-up strike to finish the job before the mob can recover. Watching his health dip during the exchange and realizing the current leveling pace is unsustainable, reviewing his SSS rank open and upright talent which promises a guaranteed one-hit kill, questioning why the trigger conditions for that talent have not activated during his stealth ambushes, Yuju realizes that attacking from stealth might disqualify his SSS rank talent. Even though he lands a clean critical strike, the passive ability remains dormant. He settles for a standard headshot kill and loots a novice recovery potion. Frustrated by the vague requirements of his power, he resolves to test new variables. Considering the name open and upright, he wonders if visibility is the key. Deciding to test this theory, he locks eyes with a nearby demonic sheep, The creature remains blissfully unaware as he prepares to break his stealth. Yu lunges forward with a direct strike, abandoning his usual hidden approach. Yet the talent fails to activate again, leaving him to chug another potion. He realizes that merely being visible is not enough to satisfy the condition. Wondering if he needs to be more dramatic, he contemplates a formal declaration. He decides to mimic the classic tropes of a flamboyant, theatrical killer. Yu steps into plain view and shouts his own name to his target, feeling absolutely ridiculous as he announces his presence to a confused animal. The sheep stares back blankly at the absurdity of the situation. Yu successfully lands the strike, even if the theatrical nature of the kill feels completely out of character, confirming his theory that the talent requires an open, formal declaration to function. But the realization brings a new problem. He cannot possibly introduce himself to every single sheep individually, because stopping to chat with an entire herd would absolutely tank his hunting efficiency. So he starts brainstorming a way to trigger the one-hit kill on multiple targets at once, scanning the area to make sure no other players are around to witness his upcoming public display of insanity, taking a deep breath before he commits to the most ridiculous combat maneuver of his life. And Yu screams his name and intent across the field, putting on a show for the confused herd, leaving the demonic sheep blinking at the sudden, bizarre interruption. While he grins, satisfied that every single one of them has heard his announcement, then he blurs into motion, carving through the targets as the system count begins to climb, dropping sheep after sheep in rapid succession until he hits 14 kills in a heartbeat, which triggers a level-up notification for his assassin class, and the massacre continues as his kill count skyrockets past 49, reaching a solid 50. Pushing him all the way to level 3 while the slaughter shows no sign of slowing down, Yu realizes that his SSS-ranked talent can lock onto multiple targets simultaneously, provided he declares his intent openly and charges them head-on, recalling his sister's cryptic warnings about the true nature of his power. When a massive golden magic circle manifests in the sky, signaling a rare boss event triggered by his slaughter, and the center of that circle erupts with a blinding lethal energy. As a level 5 black demonic sheep elite emerges from the light, stats far outweighing the basic herd, Yu sees this high-level threat not as a death sentence, but as the perfect test for his talent's practicality, so he shouts his name and intent directly at the beast, fulfilling the bizarre activation requirement. Meanwhile, a group of rival players watches from a distance, mocking his arrogance for trying to grind alone. These scavengers assume Yu is just another overconfident amateur about to get himself killed. They plan to swoop in the second he dies to strip his high-grade gear clean, but their confidence shatters the moment they see the elite sheep turn its focus toward the battlefield. Realization hits them that Yu is facing a monster well beyond his pay grade, as Yu's system interface confirms his talent is active, highlighting the elite sheep as a valid target, and he readies his blade, knowing one successful connection will trigger an instant kill. The elite sheep launches into a high-speed body slam, leaving Yu zero margin for error, and with the system flagging the elite's immunity to crowd control, it's a pure stat check, knowing his low HP assassin build offers no protection if a single hit connects. He scrambles to evade the incoming charge while acknowledging his paper-thin defenses, barely dodging the massive collision as the elite sheep tears through the terrain. Frustration mounts because his short-range daggers make finding an opening against this beast nearly impossible. Suddenly, the elite unleashes a massive shockwave, forcing Yu to scramble away. Realizing that the boss has devastating area of effect skills, he abandons any hope of a counterattack, sprinting for his life as the elite sheep's reach dominates the entire battlefield. And with his lungs burning, he pours every ounce of speed into escaping the danger zone. The elite sheep stomps the ground hard, triggering a wide-range crater that knocks back anything nearby. Yu gets caught in the blast radius and goes flying, checking his UI to see his health plummeting to a critical 30 out of 240. Chugging a health potion to survive, he resents the limitations of his assassin class compared to a tank, but remembers he holds an SSS class talent that turns the tide if he survives this. Yu realizes he needs more raw power to stop threats from looming over him, and he fixes his gaze on the elite, determined to crush every obstacle in his path. The black demonic sheep elite lunges forward with a massive dark charge strike, so Yu commits to pushing past his current limits to truly master his SSS rank talent, vowing to sharpen his reflexes until he can dodge attacks by pure instinct alone. He also decides to prioritize boosting his defensive stats to insane levels, effectively turning himself into a tanky assassin capable of withstanding anything the boss throws. The elite falls, rewarding Yu with a new title and a permanent buff against sheep-type beasts, and he finally glimpses the true path he must take to reach the pinnacle of strength, focusing entirely on survivability so he can close the distance and land a single scratch. The system grants him a cursed sheep necklace that tanks his damage but massively increases his total HP, pushing his health well into the triple digits and making him significantly harder to one-shot. But a sudden, sharp pain cuts through him as a blade pierces him from behind, and he coughs up blood while an unknown attacker mocks his efforts with a cold farewell. Yu recognizes the man as one of the scavengers who is harassing the siblings back in town. The scavenger mocks Yamiya-jun, offering to pass on his belongings to his family like it's a joke. But the wounded assassin struggles to breathe while blood spills from his chest, and with his last ounce of willpower, Yamiya-jun formally declares his intent to kill his betrayer. The scavenger laughs off the threat as empty talk, claiming injuries and pain are the only real things left in this world. Then he twists the blade deeper into Yamiya-jun, taunting him about how little strength he could possibly have left to fight back. Yamiya-jun ignores the agony and whispers his instant kill skill. And his SSS rank talent triggers instantly, driving his blade into the scavenger's vitals with lethal precision. The attacker realizes his mistake the moment the skill connects. His face contorting in pure disbelief as he feels his life force drain, Yamiya-jun pulls the blade free, his own wound still bleeding heavily from the initial strike, and the scavenger drops dead, leaving the assassin standing alone in the field. Yamiya-jun reaches down to pick up a dropped item, cursing his own carelessness for letting his guard down. Then he downs a healing potion to stabilize his condition, admitting he never expected an ambush here. The cursed sheep necklace saved his life by keeping his HP from hitting 0, and he knows he would be dead without it. He recalls the scavenger's final words about playing hero, and realizes this guy was likely working for that leader-type thug he crossed paths with back in town. Yamiya-jun realizes the dead scavenger system will automatically report his death to the crew. So he packs up and clears the area immediately to avoid an incoming swarm of thugs, deciding that his open and upright talent makes hunting high-level elites his best path forward. He channels his energy into his blade, ready to tackle significantly tougher foes, and sets his sights on elite mobs to maximize his efficiency and level growth. Meanwhile, the scavenger's party arrives at the exact spot where the signal suddenly cut out, where the group leader stares down at the remains, demanding to know what happened to his subordinate. A lackey nervously explains that the missing scout was hunting that same assassin from earlier, and the boss realizes his own brother was eliminated by that exact same trash-tier player. His fury boils over as he realizes his crew just lost another man to the same target, so he orders his entire guild to fan out across the ruins and hunt Yamiya-jun down, screaming that he intends to personally slaughter the guy responsible for this mess. While Yamiya-jun, unaware of the manhunt, keeps moving deeper into the ashen ruins, where he spots a ferocious dark wolf prowling the outer rim of the wasteland, and watches as a high-level adventurer nearby unleashes a holy light blast to fend off the beast. The holy light blast washes over the battlefield, while Yamiya-jun, hiding in the shadows of a nearby wall, observes the display. And deciding it is time to get back to the grind, he readies his blade for a hunt, spotting a lone ash hound wandering away from its pack. He formally invokes his name and intent, triggering his SSS rank talent. The beast locks eyes with him, marking its target for the kill, and as it lunges, Yamiya-jun easily tracks its simple, predictable movements, tanking a direct hit that would have crushed a normal player thanks to his massive HP. He delivers a precise counterstrike, instantly ending the predator's life, gaining experience points from the win while realizing he can handle a dozen more with ease. But a sudden spike in hostile intent forces him to snap his head around, and he finds himself surrounded by more ash hounds than he expected. Realizing the first one was merely bait to lure him into an ambush, he stares down the growing pack that now blocks his only path forward. And despite the odds, he refuses to back down from the challenge. Yamiya-jun grabs the loot from his recent kill, spotting a natural recovery potion and a sword dance skill book, deciding to equip the skill immediately to gain an edge against the approaching pack. His instincts sharpen as the first ash hound lunges with jaws wide open, so Yamiya-jun declares his name and intention to trigger his open and upright talent. Slashing through the first beast with lethal precision as the talent guarantees a fatal blow, the surrounding pack closes in to stop him, but he weaves through their strikes, parrying a set of fangs with his blade before driving it into the hound's skull. He avoids a point-blank bite by centimeters, and the system confirms another instant kill as the hound collapses to the ground. He ignores the proximity of the snapping jaws, landing a heavy hit that drains a massive chunk of health from the next target. Yamiya-jun forces his blade deep into the neck of a lunging predator, standing his ground as the remaining pack members circle him for a final coordinated assault. The hounds surround him from every angle, their glowing eyes burning in the dark, but he strikes them down one by one with the deadly efficiency of his skill. Yamiya-jun hits level 4 and he's feeling pretty untouchable after taking down 13 enemies solo. He checks his inventory and realizes the sword dance skill is actually broken. Then a natural recovery book drops which lets him passively regenerate health outside of combat, so he equips the skill and plans to sell his extra potions for some easy cash. Now it's time to keep grinding and he heads back out to hunt for more prey. But a massive, rumbling presence catches his attention out of nowhere. A level 10 boss hound charges toward him, and it is clearly not another trash mob. He spots a fresh wound on the beast and wonders if it's already been softened up. Then he activates his concealment skill, remembering the tavern rumors about how sniping someone else's target invites a bloodbath. His only priority is making enough money for Nagisa, so he tries to stay out of the drama. But the beast is already lunging, and it's way faster than he anticipated. The hound slams into a boulder with a massive impact, and Yamiya-jun takes a hit. His concealment drops, forcing him to scramble back and reset his footing. He triggers his open and upright talent, warning everyone nearby to clear out. He tries to brush the boss off, hoping to avoid a pointless fight. The boss hound lunges, and Yamiya-jun narrowly avoids being shredded by its massive claws. Counterstrike lands, but he takes a brutal hit that drops his health to a critical 45. He realizes his HP is nearly bottomed out and he has to end this before another attack connects. Yamiya-jun goes for a high-risk gamble, leaping directly toward the monster with his blade drawn. His strike connects perfectly, triggering a lethal one-hit kill that finally puts the beast down. The boss hound collapses in a heap as the surrounding red aura fades away. System notification confirms he has defeated the boss and earned the Hound Slayer title. The reward perks appear, granting him a massive boost to physical and magic stats against dog-type beasts. He hears voices nearby and turns to see a pair of survivors watching him in disbelief. Yamiya-jun brushes off their surprise, mentioning he only finished it because the monster turned on him. The man in blue calls him a hero, but Yamiya-jun just wants to move on. Sudokoda introduces himself and his sister Yuzuki, thanking Yamiya-jun for saving them back at the plaza. Yamiya-jun realizes who they are and immediately tells them to take the loot so he can leave. Sudokoda and Yuzuki exchange glances, realizing his burst damage could help them take down the Blackrock Serpent. Sudokoda chases after him, desperate to get his attention before he disappears into the ruins. Sudokoda and Yuzuki beg Yamiya-jun to join their party for the Blackrock Serpent hunt. Yamiya-jun questions the logic of tackling a dungeon boss while still under level 10. Sudokoda explains the Master Rank title requires defeating 3 bosses before hitting level 10. Yuzuki adds that the title grants a 10% stat boost in entry into top-tier guilds. Sudokoda highlights Yamiya-jun's solo boss skilling ability as their best chance for success. Yamiya-jun weighs the risk of being tricked against the chance to scout high-level players. Deciding the benefits outweigh the dangers, Yamiya-jun shakes hands with Sudokoda and Yuzuki. Sudokoda shows off the Demon Hound dagger he looted. While Yamiya-jun considers gathering intel, the trio arrives at the Blackrock Serpent's lair, where a group of players is already gathered. Yamiya-jun notices other players paying fees to enter, so he uses his party to bypass the cost. Entering the dungeon with his new allies saves Yamiya-jun from paying the entry toll. The team pushes deep into the cavernous lair to hunt the target. Yamiya-jun observes the serpent's small size, worrying it might be difficult to land a hit. Sudokoda clarifies that he and Yuzuki will manage the serpent while Yamiya-jun handles the berserk phase. The Blackrock Serpent suddenly erupts from the ground, forcing the trio into defensive positions. The Blackrock Serpent's stats appear before Yamiya-jun, showing the massive threat posed by its berserk skill. He calculates that the serpent's strike would easily overwhelm a standard warrior's shield, and he realizes that relying on external guides would have been a fatal mistake. So he stays in his invisible state to avoid taking massive damage. As the serpent roars and prepares to unleash its devastating frenzy, Sudokoda shouts a warning about the falling stalactites, because these environmental hazards deal heavy area damage to everyone nearby. Yamiya-jun weaves through the debris, dodging the incoming chaos, while Yuzuki urges him to hold his position and stay hidden, and Yuzuki heals the party, explaining that they must whittle the serpent down slowly, because dealing 10% of its health in 10 seconds will trigger the dangerous berserk mode. But Yamiya-jun knows that berserk doubles the serpent's damage while cutting its skill cooldowns in half. And he realizes his ultimate talent, open and upright, requires him to reveal his intent, which means he must discard his cursed necklace to regain his full attack power, but he intends to wait for the perfect opening to land a single, decisive blow back at the lair entrance. A ruthless mercenary leader orders his underlings to hunt down Yamiya-jun, but his scouts beg him to reconsider, fearing they will be trapped inside once the Blackrock Serpent goes berserk. And the boss ignores their pleas, physically shoving them into the dungeon to force their cooperation, while he threatens to slaughter their families back home if they dare to retreat or fail his orders. So the terrified scouts scramble into the darkness of the ruin, desperately trying to avoid their certain doom, and the mercenary boss follows them inside, mocking their cowardice while assuming he can control the battlefield. He explains his plan to wait for Yamiya-jun's party to weaken the boss before he moves in to claim the kill. And he demands his men focus their fire on Sudokoda, Yuzuki, and Yamiya-jun to avenge his fallen brother, while one of the scouts cries out that the mission is a suicide run. But the leader silences him with another death threat, forcing the group to commit to the assault, and just as the Blackrock Serpent begins to falter, the mercenaries charge toward Yamiya-jun's position. The boss screams the order to attack, sending his men into the fray against Yamiya-jun, Sudokoda, and Yuzuki. And the scouts open fire with magical projectiles, forcing Yamiya-jun's party to shift their focus from the boss, while Sudokoda barely manages to block the incoming barrage, realizing the sheer scale of the ambush, and damage numbers spike across the cavern as the Blackrock Serpent begins its terrifying transition into the berserk phase. Yamiya-jun realizes the chaotic ambush is the work of the stragglers he encountered earlier. But Sudokoda and Yuzuki urge him to abandon the lair immediately using a combat evasion stone. And they press the rare, high-value item into Yamiya-jun's hands before the situation worsens, as the trio coordinates a quick retreat while the serpent begins its final, lethal transformation. Then a brilliant flash of light engulfs Sudokoda and Yuzuki as they teleport to safety, leaving Yamiya-jun holding the expensive stone, acknowledging that his friend Su-hong is a reliable ally. And the dungeon floor shatters as the Blackrock Serpent finally completes its terrifying physical evolution. While debris cascades from the cavern's ceiling under the immense pressure of the boss's awakening, as the serpent's eyes glow with a dark, predatory light, locking onto the remaining targets in the room, then the system confirms the Blackrock Serpent has officially triggered its unstoppable berserk state, and the beast immediately lashes out at the unsuspecting mercenary scouts who were foolish enough to linger, while Yamiya-jun stays perfectly hidden in his stealth state, watching the chaos unfold from the shadows. As the ruthless mercenary leader screams orders for his men to hunt down the invisible assassin, but the leader is caught off guard as a lethal blow pierces his chest from an unseen attacker, and blood spills across the mercenary leader's armor, leaving him gasping in disbelief at the sudden betrayal. The dying mercenary curses Yamiya-jun, gloating that they are both trapped in the boss fight. Then he draws the Blackrock Serpent's full attention toward their position with a desperate final scream. And a massive meteor strike slams down, obliterating the remaining mercenaries in a display of pure chaotic power. Yamiya-jun watches the carnage with a cold, detached smirk, musing that karma has finally caught up to them, as the Blackrock serpent turns its gaze toward him, forcing Yamiya-jun to drop his now useless stealth skill. Stepping out into the open, the assassin reflects on how hiding his true strength has been a massive burden, and he taunts the beast, declaring that with the spectators gone, he no longer needs to hold back his speed. Yamiya-jun channels his focus for his sister and his future, finally activating the open and upright talent, confirming that Sudo-Koda and Yuzuki have safely escaped. He charges headfirst into the serpent's reach. The boss lashes out with a lightning-fast tail whip, its berserk state pushing its speed to terrifying new limits. Spirits of the fallen mercenaries drift upward, their lives taken as the final price for their greed. Yamiya-jun ignores the ghostly remnants, his focus entirely on the singular target looming before him. The Blackrock serpent lets out a deafening roar, its massive jaws lunging to crush the assassin. Calm and collected, Yamiya-jun prepares to end this cycle of violence once and for all. He weaves through the beast's frenzied hammering, moving with a precision that defies the monster's chaotic assault. Yamiya-jun launches a full-force strike, intending to carve through the Blackrock serpent's hide, but the massive beast does not even flinch as he screams his intent to claim its life. Metal clashes against hardened scales, and the shock ripples through his entire arm. Yamiya-jun realizes with mounting frustration that his decisive blow has been completely deflected. The Blackrock serpent retaliates instantly with Meteor Strike, forcing him to scramble backward just to survive. Raw kinetic force slams into him, sending him skidding across the uneven cavern floor. He quickly processes the failure, concluding that his open and upright talent is currently ineffective against the boss. Memories of past work experience flood back, reminding him that total immunity usually requires more than simple power. He deduces that the serpent is likely sporting a specific mechanic rather than just high base stats. Another massive strike whistles through the air, barely missing his head as the serpent stays on the offensive. A follow-up tail whip connects, punishing his hesitation and throwing his balance into chaos. He considers burning the combat evasion stone to reset the fight, hoping for a cleaner attempt after respawn. But the serpent is already charging another meteor strike, leaving him no room to breathe or retreat. Forced to find another way, he dives back into the fray while dodging the serpent's lethal reach. He scans the beast's dark, undulating body with desperate intensity. Yamiya-jun spots the one white scale standing out against the serpent's pitch-black hide and realizes that specific point has been consistent throughout the entire boss encounter. Figuring if the beast's invulnerability is just a mechanic, then that white scale is almost certainly the only way to bypass it, so he taunts the Blackrock serpent to draw out its next move. Gripping his blade tight as he prepares to turn this monster into his stepping stone, the serpent immediately triggers its meteor strike, flooding the area with purple energy, but Yamiya-jun sees the opening he needs and lunges forward at the perfect moment. Vaulting high into the air as the massive beast coils beneath him, he descends with lethal precision to strike at the exposed white scale, screaming out his challenge while driving his blade deep into the target. The steel bites home with a sharp metallic ring, signaling a successful hit. Light erupts from the wound as the serpent lets out one final dying roar. Yamiya-jun lands on the solid ground as the massive creature begins to dissipate. He watches the shadows fade, briefly wondering if a second phase is coming. The serpentine spirit finally dissolves into nothingness, marking the end of its long captivity. Yamiya-jun watches the system notifications pop up as he hits level 7. Rare loot items materialize in the air, pulling his attention away from the dying boss. Master tier Black Rock silver armor appears, boasting ridiculous stats and a double effect passive bonus. He realizes this gear is game-breaking, especially with its unique combat barrier mechanics. Sorting through the rest of the spoils becomes his next immediate priority. Meanwhile, the group outside the cave entrance remains trapped behind a shimmering, impassable barrier. They regret provoking the stragglers who caused this chaotic mess in the first place. Wondering if Yamiya-jun survived the encounter, the pair debates whether to keep waiting. One of them insists on holding their position until the light barrier turns blue. They lament the fact that they never even learned the hero's actual name. Suddenly the barrier flickers and dies, prompting the two to prepare for immediate combat. Yamiya-jun steps out from the cave's dark maw, completely unscathed and surprisingly calm. He offers a casual greeting, brushing off the delay as if he were just grabbing coffee. The pair stares at him in absolute disbelief, struggling to process how he survived the boss. Yamiya-jun waves off the intensity of the boss fight, telling Sudo-Koda and Yuzuki he just needed extra time. Sudo-Koda asks about the other stragglers, but Yamiya-jun confirms none of them survived the serpent's berserk state. The news hits the survivors hard, leaving them visibly shaken as they process the total loss. Yamiya-jun pulls out a rare priest-class book dropped by the beast, presenting it as a bargaining chip. He asks Sudo-Koda for detailed intel on the remaining 2 novice bosses, hoping for a fair trade. The pseudo-siblings explain how they bonded with Yamiya-jun during his solo run after the main chaos subsided. Despite the connection, he chose to keep his specific talent hidden to maintain his distance. Sudo-Koda reveals they are actually children of the Red Dragon Guild Master, which explains their secret access. He hands over a detailed guide on the remaining boss encounters that practically maps out the win. Yamiya-jun ignores the thrill of the hunt, focused entirely on getting back to Najsa and keeping her safe. He notes that the big guilds are already poaching top prospects, so he needs to gear up in Ashen City fast. Arriving in the Ashen City trading district, he scouts for the best merchants to liquidate his loot. He offloads a mountain of serpent parts to a vendor, securing the gold needed for his new setup. The merchant hands over the payment, clearly impressed by the quality of the materials he brought in. Gold coins rain down as he completes the transaction, finally clearing his pockets for some real shopping. Yamiya-jun reviews his inventory, realizing most of the loot from the Blackrock Serpent is still locked behind level requirements. Pulling up his character sheet, he confirms the new loadout and specialized gear he's finalized for his upcoming runs. The Wind Panther Fang Blade is his primary choice, specifically picked because it scales his speed to exploit his one-hit kill talent. Yamiya-jun plans to layer his defensive buffs, stacking the Lizard's Blessing Shield with his other passive equipment to maximize his durability. Swapping out his gear to optimize for survival, he prepares his kit to withstand the intense pressure of the next boss encounter. He decides to pivot his skill points into Swift Step, trading his stealth abilities for raw speed to blitz through future dungeons. Loading up on every counter potion he can carry, Yamiya-jun ensures he has the utility needed to handle water and flame-based mechanics, now fully prepared. He walks toward the dungeon gates with a clear goal to clear the remaining novice bosses in one sweep. Arriving at the Flame Rhino's lair, Yamiya-jun is baffled to find the area completely overrun by other players. The massive crowd blocking his path is totally unexpected, especially since he thought this boss would be his quickest kill, yet knowing he needs to get back to Nagisa quickly, he starts looking for a way to break through the congestion. A random player approaches him, clearly sizing him up and questioning why an assassin would dare show up solo. The stranger tries to recruit him for a group, but takes one look at Yamiya-jun's gear and immediately backtracks, watching the guy scramble away in embarrassment. Yamiya-jun is left standing there, wondering what just happened. He stops the guy to ask what the problem is, only to hear that assassins are considered a liability for this specific boss. The stranger warns Yamiya-jun that partying with an assassin against the Flame Rhino is a death sentence, because the boss deals constant magic damage that completely hard counters his low defense class, but Yamiya-jun realizes that the crowd's presence is actually the perfect cover to test his high-level skills, if he acts like a cringeworthy Chunabu. Everyone will dismiss his combat prowess as just a weird performance, allowing him to activate his talents without anyone suspecting his true capability as a top-tier player. He scoffs at the warnings and casually knocks the doubting stranger to the ground with a shove, declaring loudly to the surrounding players that he intends to solo the Flame Rhino without any help. The watching crowd immediately labels him as another arrogant solo player who has no idea what he is doing. Yamiya-jun cranks up his act, channeling a dark, over-the-top aura as he approaches the boss lair. He starts chanting bizarre phrases to unnerve the bystanders and ensure they keep their eyes off his actual movements. While screaming that he can take down the boss on his own to prove his superiority, the surrounding players watch him with a mix of pity and confusion as he marches past them, moving deeper into the boss territory while keeping up his erratic, performative persona. Veteran players in the distance compare his intensity to a legendary hot-blooded player from the past. They watch his silhouette fade into the distance, disappointed that such a striking look is wasted on a weirdo. Yamiya-jun admits that keeping up the Chunabu persona is surprisingly draining, but he shakes off the exhaustion as the massive Flame Rhino finally enters his range, and the system confirms the level 15 boss has officially spawned in the chamber. Yamiya-jun drops the act for a second to announce his name as he draws his blade. Triggering his open and above-board talent to ensure a single, clean strike, he lunges into the wall of fire with pinpoint precision, and the Rhino drops instantly as the blade connects with its core, vanishing into embers before it can even mount a proper counterattack. Yamiya-jun notes the extreme danger of the boss after losing half his HP from a mere brush with the flames. The system confirms his victory and grants him the Flame Warrior title alongside a level up. Blue energy embers drift away as the boss area clears out completely, turning his focus toward the next target, the Emerald Wader Turtle. He prepares to repeat the same high-speed elimination process, and the turtle falls just as easily under his relentless assault. Yamiya-jun hits level 9 and secures the Turtle's Slayer and Giant Rookie titles in rapid succession. A mysterious system alert pops up out of nowhere, and Yamiya-jun finds himself clutching a glowing red envelope labeled Invitation to the Nether Trial, reflecting on his solo run through the beginner dungeons that somehow triggered this unique drop. He reads the item description and realizes even the well-connected pseudo-siblings have never mentioned this hidden challenge. Guessing that the trial must be packed with insane loot, he tucks the invitation away, deciding to finish farming the remaining bosses first. Yamiya-jun cuts down another monster with ease. While walking through town, he notices other players whispering about the weird, solo-grinding Chunabu prodigy. They gossip about the guy who supposedly soloed the Flame Rhino. Unaware he is listening to every word, he takes down the Flame Rhino and officially hits level 10, unlocking a new monster appraisal skill that finally explains why Pseudo-Koda's data was so precise. A system warning asks if he wants to cap his experience or exit, but he's not finished here yet. He selects the Ashen City Plaza as his teleport destination. Using an escape stone to warp out of the dungeon, Yamiya-jun arrives in the city ready to prep for his next big move. Yamiya-jun hits the local market to stock up on supplies, while upgrading his kit with masterwork tier gear like the blood-drinking Nether Dagger. And he boosts his core stats by sinking those hard-earned level 10 points into Phantom Form and Sword Dance, finally deciding he has the perfect loadout to initiate the Nether Trial. So he pulls out the mysterious invitation and tosses it into the air to trigger the sequence, causing a swirling vortex of energy to rip open the space right in front of him, where two celestial entities watch as he steps toward the unknown, while he whispers a promise to Nagisa that he will be home soon. Then he plunges headfirst into the Crimson Portal, receiving a system prompt that the Nether Trial is a 22-floor solo gauntlet, and he lands inside a massive, desolate arena that feels eerily quiet, noting that the system messages sound different here as a dark, pulsating mass manifests before him. Out pops a level 10 demonic orc archer. Yamiya Jun drops the act, deciding to end this fight with pure lethal efficiency. And he pulls out his masterwork Noble Blood Dagger to trigger the Shadow Blade buff, before charging the archer to activate his one-hit kill talent, open and above board, as the demon swings its massive blade in a desperate attempt to fend him off. But Jun deflects the incoming arrow midair and unleashes Sword Dance, and the skill lands perfectly, resulting in an instant kill that slices through the target, while Jun notes his body feels surprisingly light after the lethal strike. Watching the archer disintegrate into nothingness before his eyes, and he realizes that investing in Sword Dance was the best strategic choice, so he accepts the system prompt to advance to the second floor of the trial, only to discover the entire arena is actually a massive elevator moving upward, and the floor jerks to a halt, signaling the arrival of the next pair of enemies as a dark, swirling rift opens to reveal two new demonic threats, where a pair of heavily armored orcs emerge, one wielding a glowing ice staff, and Jun lunges forward with his talent active, ready to take them both down. Yamiya Jun vaults over the orc's freezing strike, narrowly avoiding a total lockdown, and he whips out a flame potion, knowing it is his only defense against the magical chill as the shards of ice explode around him. Yamiya Jun dashes through the freezing zone, dodging the orc's counterswipe by a hair's breadth, which proves his preparation against the Emerald Turtle was well worth the effort. But the second orc immediately channels another freezing spell right in his face, so Yamiya Jun triggers his Emerald Forehead Ring, forcing the spell to fizzle out, and the orc recoils as its casting attempt is forcibly interrupted, leaving Yamiya Jun with a rare opening to reclaim the initiative while he locks eyes with the remaining warrior, making it clear the tides have turned. The orc slams its massive weapon down, trying to regain control of the floor, but the brute misses its mark, leaving its defenses wide open, and Yamiya Jun exploits the gap, closing the distance in a flash of speed, driving his blade deep into the orc's chest with lethal precision. As the first enemy falls, Yamiya Jun pivots to face the ice-wielding threat. Yamiya Jun narrowly dodges a lethal ice spear, realizing his Dragonbinder ring only locks the enemy for a single second. So he abandons the hope of a long stun, acknowledging that relying on a single trump card is a recipe for disaster in a real brawl, and he immediately triggers his Shadow Blade and Swift Step to blitz the caster before another spell can form. The orc tries to shout a freezing incantation, but Yamiya Jun is already there, driving his blade home with a decisive strike. The remaining demonic threat collapses under the assault. And as Yamiya Jun recovers 1500 health through his blood-drinking dagger, he realizes the trial is only going to get more crowded with specialized parties. The system confirms floor 2 is clear, and with zero hesitation, Yamiya Jun commits to pushing straight into the third floor. He tears through the third level with relentless efficiency, dispatching a wave of enemies on the fourth floor as he continues his upward climb. Floor 5 falls just as quickly, granting him a stash of gear enhancement stones. Realizing the system only hands out these rewards in 5-floor increments, he smirks at the delay and he carves his way through the 6th and 7th levels without breaking his rhythm. Yamiya Jun tears through the 8th and 9th floors, leaving nothing but carnage in his wake. Floor 10 finally clears and the system menu pops up with a fat stack of enhancement stones. Calculating the market value of those stones, he realizes skipping this payout would be a massive loss. But the thought of hitting even higher floors to multiply his wealth overrides his caution. Confident in his current power, he decides it is time to push his limits. Slamming his hand onto the interface, Yamiya Jun officially triggers the next stage. Purple energy swirls violently as the boss room begins to manifest. Catching sight of the massive figure emerging from the mist, he immediately recognizes the threat. The demonic orc lord steps forward, its skull-adorned gear pulsing with dark intent. System windows reveal the boss's stats, boasting high health, heavy physical attacks, and dangerous area of effect skills. Assessing the enemy's moveset, he notes the minion summon mechanic that triggers at half health, unimpressed by the boss's reputation. Yamiya Jun compares its durability to the Blackrock serpent he faced before. Declaring his intent to kill, he activates his signature open and above-board talent for a potential one-shot. Surging forward with Shadow Blade active, he plans to end the fight before the orc can even move. A massive spiked club swings down, forcing him to shift his momentum mid-dash. Yamiya Jun narrowly avoids the demonic orc lord's massive club. Realizing the boss is shockingly fast for its gargantuan size, the orc roars and prepares another brutal swing. While a glowing runic trap suddenly manifests beneath Yamiya Jun's feet, he senses he has no time to dodge the impending detonation, so he instantly triggers his phantom form skill to mitigate the impact. The trap explodes with overwhelming force, and the blast slams into Yamiya Jun, forcing a pained grunt from him, but he realizes that leveling up the skill saved him from certain death. He watches the massive orc close the distance with surprising agility. So Yamiya Jun decides it is time to reveal his next trump card. The orc lunges forward, ready to crush him with raw power, but Yamiya Jun keeps his cool as he activates his Shadow Blade and Swift Step. He launches himself directly toward the incoming club, darting past the massive weapon with frame-perfect precision. Yamiya Jun skids across the floor, ready to test his strategy against the boss. He originally acquired this skill for Blackrock Serpent's berserk states. And the demonic orc lord realizes too late that it has been outplayed. As Yamiya Jun leaps onto the boss's back, targeting its shadow with precision, this is exactly the moment he has been waiting for to test his new build. Shadow Sentence activates, forcing the boss's own shadow to take damage for the main body. Burning a fortune to swap for this skill was the absolute right play. The demonic orc lord bellows in agony as its life force drains away. With one clean strike, Yamiya Jun lands the decisive blow he worked so hard for. He knows this commander is worth a mountain of equipment, stones, and loot. Landing the critical hit, the system confirms the boss's defeat. The demonic orc lord lets out one final scream before collapsing. Level rewards flood the screen, granting him the Nether Apostle title and massive stat buffs. He does not hesitate for a second, immediately choosing to continue the challenge. But the arena falls strangely silent while he waits for the next wave. A sudden projectile slices through the air, forcing Yamiya Jun to dodge an incoming arrow from the shadows. As the demonized elf archer reveals its presence on the battlefield, Yamiya Jun activates his signature talent and charges straight for the marksman. But the system warns that this level 101 enemy has a rapid-fire skill, so he triggers endurance and sprint to close the gap at high speed. Dodging a flurry of lethal shafts while pushing through the enemy's formation, he calls upon his intangibility skill to phase through the incoming rain of steel, shrugging off the pressure thanks to his superior gear and active buffs. While he ignores the pestering attacks to get within striking distance, Yamiya Jun lands a precise strike that activates his instant kill talent, and the fallen elf dissolves into a burst of dark energy, revealing a gateway that offers him the choice to press deeper into the trial. Despite realizing there are 9 more daunting gates waiting for him, he steps through only to find a new corrupted assassin waiting in ambush. Yamiya Jun barely dodges the initial strike, but realizes too late that his opponent is not fighting fair, as a hidden blade pierces his armor and draws blood immediately, making him understand he is dealing with a lethal, invisible assassin. So he triggers his intangibility skill to phase through the incoming follow-up attack. The assassin introduces himself as Yu Jun while Yamiya Jun prepares his own deadly counter, and the enemy vanishes into thin air right before his eyes, forcing Yamiya Jun to retrieve his fire oil and demonic rhino saliva. He kicks up a cloud of debris to track the invisible killer's movement, then activates his shadow sprint to close the distance instantly. Delivering a precise kick that forces the hiding Yu Jun into the open, he follows up with a swift slash that connects across the assassin's chest, and tosses his volatile potions onto the ground as the enemy tries to retreat, igniting a massive blaze that finally forces Yu Jun to reveal his position. Yamiya Jun realizes his direct attacks are not triggering his one-hit kill effect. Yamiya Jun finally triggers his one-hit kill talent, and the assassin-type monster is instantly pulled into a swirling void of energy, leaving the path ahead clear as the system prompts Yamiya Jun to continue the trial. He chooses to push forward, eager to claim the rewards hidden in the deeper levels, passing through the portal to reach the 22nd floor, where the system confirms his progress and hands over a massive haul of loot, stepping into a blindingly bright chamber that nearly overwhelms his senses. Yamiya Jun shields his eyes from the intense glow, finding himself in a grand hall anchored by massive marble pillars. He spots an elf commander seated on a throne, acknowledging his presence after years of isolation. Yamiya Jun asks if the entity can communicate, and the elf commander mocks him, predicting he will eventually flee in defeat. Yamiya Jun remains defiant, swearing he will not fail the trial. The elf commander sighs, clearly unimpressed by his stubbornness. Suddenly, the elf commander releases a massive burst of dark energy. Yamiya Jun calls the commander's bluff, ready to throw hands despite the massive power gap. The boss reveals his true stats and the lethal death curse skill, turning the arena into a death trap. Feeling the sheer weight of the boss's aura, Yamiya Jun realizes he is severely outclassed. Dark energy floods the room as the commander asserts his dominance, forcing Yamiya Jun to keep his distance. Questioning the game's twisted logic, Yamiya Jun wonders why a friendly NPC turned into such a nightmare. The commander begins channeling the death curse, locking onto his prey with lethal intent. Shadows erupt around Yamiya Jun as the curse manifests, signaling the start of a desperate fight for survival. Recognizing the danger, Yamiya Jun screams for his phasing skill to activate before the attack hits home. The cursed skull slams into him, dealing massive true damage that shreds through his health pool. Barely clinging to life, Yamiya Jun realizes his phasing saved him from an instant kill. The commander looms over the arena, declaring eternal slumber for anyone who dares to defy his authority. Yamiya Jun immediately triggers his Shadow Blade and Swift Step, banking on his one-hit kill talent to turn the tide. Shadows lash out as the commander claims his kingdom, oblivious to the assassin closing in. Yamiya Jun lunges forward despite the pain, desperate to get within striking distance of the boss. Refusing to back down, Yamiya Jun decides to tank the incoming pressure and push straight through the barrage. Yamiya Jun ignores the incoming dark energy, focusing entirely on closing the final gap. The demonized elf commander bellows a final threat as Yamiya Jun weaves through his reach. A massive hit connects and Yamiya Jun barely hangs on, his health bar blinking dangerously low. Gasping for air, he mutters that he calculated the survival chance correctly. The boss watches as his own life force begins to fracture. Yamiya Jun strikes the killing blow with his dagger, shattering the commander's dark defenses. A system message flashes announcing the king's defeat. The commander dissolves into purple mist, claiming he is finally free from his eternal torment. Yamiya Jun studies the fading spirit, wondering why the boss acts like a scripted NPC. The spirit offers one last cryptic piece of advice, telling Yamiya Jun to keep growing. Before vanishing entirely, the commander warns him not to end up as a puppet like them. Yamiya-jun processes the ominous warning, questioning if the trial is just a setup for something darker. A massive system notification floods his vision with rewards and a clear prompt to move on. He steps toward the portal, ready to leave the 22nd floor behind. Two mysterious winged figures stand in the distance, waiting for him near the treasure. Yamiya-jun reaches for the treasure chest, believing his long-held wish is about to be granted. His fingers make contact with the lid and the lock clicks open. A massive surge of vibrant energy erupts directly from inside the container. Swirling streams of raw power flood the immediate area in a chaotic display. Yamiya-jun watches as a mysterious glowing shard manifests within the swirling aura. The light intensifies until the fragment stabilizes and pulses with dormant potential. System notification confirms he has cleared the trial and leveled up to 16. His stats climb and he prepares to equip the rare gear he has been waiting for. A spectral image of a high-tier blade hovers before him, waiting for his final approval. He confirms the selection and prepares to integrate the weapon into his arsenal. Dozens of potential blades manifest around him in a floating display of loot. The system prompts him to make his final choice from the vast selection. Yamiya-jun chuckles at the sheer volume of options. Knowing this selection will take time, he shifts his thoughts back to his brother, hoping he is staying safe while he grinds. The scene cuts to a convenience store bell chiming as a customer enters. The shop clerk hands over a stack of 6 recovery potions to the buyer, and with the transaction complete, the customer turns and walks out into the evening, leaving the store clerk behind with a lingering sense of unease. Her coworker tries to brush off the worry by insisting her brother knows how to handle himself. Yet the doubt clearly has not left her mind as she stares at the closing door. The chime rings again, signaling another person stepping into the store. She puts on a professional smile and greets the new arrival, but her expression immediately shifts when she realizes who just walked in. Tears well up in her eyes at the sight of her brother returning safe and sound. Yamiya-jun stands there with a casual grin, asking if he kept her waiting. He explains he cleared the trial without any real danger while keeping his identity secret, because he knows that staying off the leaderboard is the best way to keep them both hidden. This choice prevents professional guilds from tracking him, which is a small price to pay for their safety. Yamiya-jun even used an auction terminal to offload his excess loot for a massive payout. The bank balance is finally high enough to afford whatever they could ever want. Yamiya-jun keeps the atmosphere light as he jokes around with his sister, finally able to ignore every price tag and spoil her with whatever she wants. The simple pleasure of a quiet coffee shop becomes their new reality, where they indulge in high-end desserts that were once totally out of reach. Yamiya-jun watches his sister enjoy her treats, reflecting on how their lives have shifted. Because she gets to play dress-up and explore styles they never could afford before, while he considers how gaining more power will only secure their future even further. Though his sister seems mostly focused on picking out new clothes to fill their closet, a local shopkeeper notices the pair and remarks on how they have finally grown up, while a nearby store owner boasts about his new professional recruit with a booming laugh. He even offers Yamiya-jun a hand if anyone ever tries to mess with them again. But Yamiya-jun just laughs off the over-the-top protection. Wary of the bad influence, the siblings soon hop into a waiting taxi to head back home after the long day, exhaustion finally catching up to his sister as they settle into the ride. Yamiya-jun looks over at her sleeping form with a soft, protective smile. Yamiya-jun realizes his sister is completely wiped out after their hectic shopping trip. And he carries her all the way back home, bags and all, tucking her into bed so she can finally get some well-deserved rest. But just as he turns to leave, he feels a tug on his sleeve. His sister's hand holding onto him even in her sleep. Yamiya-jun pauses, looking back at her with a knowing expression. She mumbles for her brother, clearly not wanting to be left alone, and he gently sits back down to soothe her until she drifts off again. Meanwhile, over at the massive headquarters of the Pegasus Guild, the atmosphere in the Guildmaster's office is suffocatingly tense. An underling reports total failure in tracking down the mysterious player's real-world identity. The Guildmaster offers a creepy, predatory smile to calm his nervous subordinate, but his true interest lies in the undead elegy class user. The terrified underling bows deeply, desperate to avoid the man's wrath. Yet the Guildmaster coldly dismisses the apology, already moving on to his next move. The Pegasus Guildmaster unleashes an ethereal blue flame, and his underling is immediately struck by a curse that renders him paralyzed in agony. Then the body hits the floor with a dull thud, so the Guildmaster casually orders his staff to dispose of the trash, while a hazmat crew rolls in to scrub the office clean because a mysterious new SSS-ranked talent has just crashed into the top 50. And the Guildmaster recalls the last time a player caused such a stir, specifically when Zhu Ji rose to power within the Hall of Divine Revelation, which makes him wonder why this new expert would choose to remain anonymous, since everyone knows Zhu Ji leveraged his fame to build a massive following. But the Guildmaster realizes that hiding a talent only makes sense for one specific reason, namely that the skill is so powerful it would be targeted if revealed. So he plots to hunt this player down and absorb them into his own organization, and he decides to use his captured minion as a tool for the job. Knowing Zhu Ji once obtained rare level 5 gear from the Netherworld trial, the Pegasus Guild Master decides to force the issue by ordering a fake post on the professional forum offering a massive payout for high-level master-grade equipment, and he sets the trap with cold precision, waiting for the mysterious expert to bite. While at home, the morning starts with a quiet, peaceful air, as Yamiya-jun's sister wakes him up for breakfast, shaking off the last remnants of sleep, and she reminds him of her early school bus schedule, serving a light meal to keep his stomach settled, until she finishes up and hurries to get ready, leaving Yamiya-jun with the dishes and a busy morning, so he waves her off with a relaxed smile, and the quiet routine triggers memories of their harder days. Recalling the fire that claimed their parents years ago, Yamiya Jun reflects on the relentless grind of his past. When he and his sister Yuju worked multiple jobs just to survive, but staring at his own reflection now, he realizes the old days are behind him, so with his new status as a class holder, he finally sees a path forward, and he sets his sights on moving closer to Yuju's school, though the brutal reality of city real estate prices hits him like a truck, forcing Yamiya Jun to commit to finding a better home for his sister, because he realizes the rare items from the Nether Trial can bankroll this move, and by avoiding the greedy auction house fees, he can pocket the full profit. Then he spots an eye-watering offer of 100 million for a purple-tier item, which leaves him questioning how such a common item could be worth that much. Yet the system confirms he is holding a literal jackpot. So Yamiya Jun forces himself to stay grounded and look for the hidden trap, and he decides to use a burner account to investigate the trade safely, because he plans to bait the potential buyer into revealing their true identity. Yamiya Jun arrives at the Temple of Revelation, and he keeps his eyes peeled for any sign of a trap, because the massive profit margin on this gear trade feels way too good to be true, but he is already planning how to invest the cash into a shop for his sister. Knowing this money could guarantee her safety even if he never returns from a dungeon, so he is caught off guard when a random guard steps up and demands his cooperation, and he immediately questions how his burner account could have been compromised this quickly, but the guard insists on compliance, so Yamiya Jun tries to brush him off to maintain the initiative, and he turns to leave before the situation escalates further, when his phone suddenly rings with a cryptic, threatening message. And the voice on the other end drops his name, revealing they know exactly who he is and where he stands, so Yamiya Jun realizes the guards are just pawns in a much larger game, and he reluctantly follows the man to wherever this meeting is taking place. Yamiya Jun keeps his focus on the objective, knowing his real identity must stay hidden at all costs, as the guild lackeys confirm their target is finally walking right into their trap. While the Pegasus Guild Master waits with cold anticipation for the prey to arrive, and his desperate subordinate scrambles to explain why the mark has not appeared yet despite his psychological manipulation. But the Guildmaster dismisses the failure with a cruel grin, proving that even a PhD in psychology is nothing but a pawn, so the subordinate begs for one last chance to save his reputation, yet the Guildmaster silences him permanently with a burst of lethal energy to the head, discarding the man like trash for his lack of preparation, just as the guards lead Yamiya Jun to the heavy doors of the inner chamber, and the assassin steps inside completely unfazed by the obvious setup, where the voice from the shadows welcomes him by his true title and recognized achievements. So Yamiya Jun cuts straight to the point, demanding to know exactly who is behind this charade, and the man on the throne reveals himself as the Vice Master of the Temple of Revelation. Identifying himself as Jai Zaya Oyu, grandson of the infamous Infernal Calamity, who then lays out his true motive, offering to sponsor Yamiya Jun so they can both climb to the top.